Joining me now here in Cairo is Amr Moussa, the former Egyptian foreign minister and the former head of the Arab League. Thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you. Let me start with Syria and your reaction to news out of the U.S. that the United States is considering airstrikes if those chemical attacks are verified.
Well, it is a political message, and I don't think that, or a warning message, that the chemical weapons should not be used. But I wonder whether this region, at this juncture, would afford to have another war or a major war. If there is, or there are indications that chemical weapons were used, then the Security Council should consider the matter first, before anything else.
But you probably know what would happen in the Security Council with Russia.
No. This is a very serious situation, and let everybody express his view or their view, whether it is the United States or Russia or Europe. This is a very serious issue.
You're talking about a war. I think if they were limited airstrikes, what would the reaction be in the region?
Well, it always starts like that, limited strike, and then it widens and grows and grows and grows, and then the whole region would be involved.
But I really would like you, because you were head of the Arab League, to talk about if there were limited airstrikes, cruise missile strikes, how do you think Bashar al-Assad would respond?
Let me put it the other way. First of all, nobody should use chemical weapons against any other party. This is a very important point. Chemical weapons are not there to be used against population, civil population, or even against resistance or
Does
revolution.
It appear to be
Absolutely.
chemical weapons attack
and therefore, any possible use of chemical weapons should be condemned. But we need also a position taken by the Security Council. The Security Council should address this issue of the use of chemical weapons or the use of weapons of mass destruction that should be underlined in the Security Council before any action. Those are information. We are not sure. The United Nations has not really said, or any other organization has not really determined whether the chemical weapons have been used or not. This is a very dangerous thing, but things have to be verified in order to take a decision just like that, an airstrike or an invasion or whatever it is.
Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And for more reaction, we are now joined by a group of journalists who have covered this region for years. Matt Bradley from the Wall Street Journal, Abigail Housloner from the Washington Post, and Ashraf Khalil from Time Magazine. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Matt, I want to start with you and touch on Syria. How do you think a military strike, if it comes to that, will affect the region?
Well, the thing that U.S. policymakers really need to think about is that this is a conflict in Syria that's already been seriously internationalized. So we already have bombings in Tripoli in northern Lebanon targeting Sunni mosques. That was over the weekend. We have refugee situations in Jordan and southern Turkey. The regime in Syria is backed by Iran, so the implications for a metastasizing situation are already there. And if the United States interjects itself militarily into this situation, we're going to see what a lot of analysts are already describing as the turning point in a regional conflict between Sunni-allied states and Shia-allied states. So it's a very dangerous situation that a military intervention could make much bigger and much, much worse.
I want to turn to Egypt, and I want to turn to you, Ashraf. And what effect in the region you think what's going on in Egypt now will have? What we've seen in the last 10 days in particular, the violence, the political fallout, what will that mean for the region?
Well, it affects things on multiple levels. I mean, you've got, for starters, Egyptians have always regarded Egypt as essentially like the sun that the rest of the Middle East revolves around. And to an extent that's been a bit exaggerated, but there's a lot of truth to it, in that where Egypt goes, the rest of the Middle East has gone. We went through 30 plus years of stagnation and borderline self-loathing under Mubarak, and the rest of the region kind of got dragged backwards along with Egypt. And then when the Arab Spring happened, it was supposed to be this moment where Egypt kind of blossomed and dragged the rest of the Middle East into the modern era, into some sort of golden age of democracy. And now, as that is obviously faltering, it can't help but have very disturbing implications.
Abby, I want to turn to you. I know you were right in the thick of it with the pro-Morsi camp that was cleared out by Egyptian security forces. I interviewed earlier this week Egypt's Prime Minister, Hassan al-Bablawi, and this is what he said.
I believe that by and large, the police forces were bound by rules, but in any situation, there are always some exceptions.
Was that your experience?
Well, that's certainly the line we've been hearing from government officials this whole time, but I think there's little doubt that the police and Egypt's security forces did use quite a bit of force. Hundreds of people were killed on the day security forces raided the pro-Morsi protest camps and in the days afterwards.
And you witnessed this.
That's right. I personally was down there during the raids. I saw police opening fire. I heard rapid gunfire. The whole place looked like a war zone. There was smoke rising from the area, and I ended up being pinned down in an alley with a number of civilians when the fighting basically expanded beyond the protest camp itself. It was very frightening, and the police were threatening not just to the people in the camp, but directly to journalists, to myself, and also to civilian bystanders.
Matt, I think what's incredible for me being here all week is to hear the support for the military, in spite of what the world witnessed. What is going on?
Well, you know, the military in Egypt has always enjoyed a lot of support. And we have to remember that the military, unlike really any other institution in Egypt, touches every single family. There's obligatory conscription in this country, and the military is considered the heart and soul, and it really is sort of the center of Egyptian life. It's almost a symbol of the sovereign nation. So when the military asks for the public, when General Sisi asks for the public to go down and protest to show him support, they will do this. And you will see this really, and what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, an incredible outpouring of just really unquestionable support.
Abigail, what do you think the future of democracy is here?
Well, it looks pretty bleak right now. You have to keep in mind, this was a coup, but it's also a widely, popularly supported coup. What's sort of interesting in Egypt is that there's this mass popular support for essentially a return to an authoritarian or military-led regime. A lot of people are really cheering on this crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood.
Ashraf, future of democracy.
Very disturbing here in Egypt. I really think one of the big what-ifs for modern Egypt is what if the crowds that came out on June 30th to demand an early end to Morsi's presidency, what if they had also drawn a line and said, and we don't want any military involvement? If they had kept that up for a week, I think we might have seen some major concessions and possibly a total retreat by the Brotherhood in the face of this, when the people not only allowed but welcomed the military back. I think that really broke the country.
Thanks for all of that insight. It was terrific talking to you.